Emotional communication is the understanding of the emotion within the word we're using, how we perceive it, and how that emotion is received by the other person. Whether it's written, spoken, sung, whether it is in an advert, a blog, or a web page. If we communicate emotionally aware of what we're saying, we communicate more efficiently.
But let's make this clear, we are emoting all the time. There is no such thing as a mind without emotion. We have a mind with images flowing, all those interesting things, pictures of the world or sounds of the world, and we also have, in response to every one of those images, some kind of emotion and some kind of feeling that comes on the heels of that emotion. So we are not necessarily thinking machines, we are feeling machines that think.
We are emotional beings. I'm nervous. You guys are listening. There's emotion. We grow through emotion. We react through emotion. We buy through emotion. We change country through emotion. We are emotional beings. And right from then, we receive sounds. These sounds are words. These sounds have nothing whatsoever to do with what they're saying it is. For example, the duo syllable mountain, has absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with mountains. In the same way that the Catalan muntanya has absolutely nothing to do, the sound, with the words. We begin to hear these words. They're coming at us. They're coming at us. And slowly, 9 months, 15 months, 18 months, we begin to use sounds back to help us survive. Something might simply be mama. Something might simply be hot, water, thirsty. We use them to get on with how we're trying to live our lives. So that as we get older, we're able to communicate better. As we get older, we learn to communicate and transmit with these sounds with other people.
So to help you navigate that, first and foremost, you have to understand where am I in the universe of emotions. Now, if I asked you to write down what emotion you're experiencing right now and gave you 5 minutes, you'd write a list of things, and then we said, okay, put your hands up, who's got how many, and we did a sort of test of how many you got. The average in a room like this would be about 10 or 12. There are 34,000 emotions.
Now, when words enter, they enter here and they enter here. They enter what we call an emotional dictionary. When we hear a sound or when we give a sound out, the word, that word we look for in our mind before we transmit it. Now, these words will vary in our lives. For example, a good example is the word home, hogar or yar. The word home varies through our lives from when we're children. You hear the word home, you use the word home, you feel at home. When you leave home, home is different. Home might be a student apartment. Home might be another country. If we live in the sub-Sahara desert, home is a different feeling, a different idea. Now, that because when we go through life, we feel a change in the word and the meaning of the word. That's what we tend to call our micro-perception of the word. There is something called a macro-perception, and that is when society changes the meaning of the word for us. Let me use an example. We have smartphones. We're all now at 4G. Before, it was 3G, because we live post-2010. Now, if we were around in America, or we were following the space program in the 60s and the 70s, and we heard 3G or 4G, we would think 3 times gravitational pull. I don't know how many of you here were around in the 60s and the 70s. I certainly remember he pulled a 10G, okay? So society, the macro change of the meaning of the word, changes the way we perceive it. And that's exactly what happens. We have a perception of a word, a meaning, and someone else has a perception. Is it the same? So when we speak, when we talk, when we hear, are we hearing what is spoken? So, let's take a look at the actual act of communication. Setting aside the intent, there are 4 steps in what happens with the word or the sound. The word is spoken. It creates this image. The mind, the emotional dictionary, looks for some form of reference to tell us what the word means. And with that image, we have an emotion. Is our emotion the same as the other person's emotion? There's another thing. I'd like to take an extra minute just to explain here, because emotion about the word can also be emotion when we actually receive it or when we actually give it. For example, a teacher. A teacher just before lunch with his class, especially 14, 15, 16-year-olds, just before lunch, they're all hungry. They're looking at the clock. They're not emotionally connected fully to what the teacher's saying. We've just come back from having coffee. We've had a break. We've relaxed. We're emotionally perhaps more perceptive and receptive to what I'm saying now. If you're giving a session as a coach in a company and you've got smokers in front of you, at about an hour and 45 minutes, you've basically lost them. Okay? So the emotion of the word and the emotion of transmission or reception modifies slightly the way we might perceive what it means. Now that provokes a consequence. If we think about work, we think about lawyers trying to explain something, we think about doctors trying to explain something. If the word that enters us, we have no reference, we get, with a doctor, worried. What does that mean? Okay?
If I asked you to think back at your most memorable dream, close your eyes, sit back and think really hard about what dream sticks out in your mind when I say memorable dream, chances are it would be a dream that you've had in the past which has nothing to do with things that you saw, the things that you touched, the things that you tasted, nothing like that. I would hazard a guess as to your most memorable dream is one in which you have a strong connection to the dream, emotionally speaking.
So, we go right back to the perception. Have we transmitted with our words the perception, the meaning, the consequence that we want? And here we get to the next point. Are we really listening? Are we listening to the sound that comes at us? Do we understand what the other person means? Because listening is an active experience. You must concentrate to listen. Approximately 250 words can be spoken per minute. Some languages go faster, some languages go slower. So 250 words a minute is what we can speak at, but we can listen at 500. And by listening at 500, we have a gap between what comes in and what we're able to absorb. So we have got this noise in our head. Silence, you can be silent when you're listening. But how much extra is going up there? How much are you thinking about the fact that you're just about to make a payment on your mortgage, or your car's broken and you can't get to where you wanted to this evening? The silence is not just not speaking. Silence is eliminating that movie that's going on in your brain. By eliminating it, you receive more freely the words that come to you.
In the Gospel of Thomas, the lost Gospel of Thomas, it literally says, when these two become one, when thought and emotion become one, then you'll say to the mountain, move, and the mountain will move.
You learn when you're silent. And he will also say, Silence sometimes is the best answer.